be kind. And subscribe.
Bienvenue, welcome to the United Nations Horror with your host Mark and Jason. Hi Jason.
Hey Mark, it's been a while. How are you?
It's been a while. A little while. Not too long.
I'll just go ahead and say at the beginning, man, it's my fault I delayed us this time,
health,
man.
Health and life.
Health and life. So.
yeah. But we're sitting down now. And this is a show we haven't done before. We've kind of done list shows, haven't we, and things like that, and things like that. But this is a much more chatty kind of thing, and we're gonna call it "Sit in the Electric Chair." So essentially, we're just ping-ponging some horror, mostly horror, but a bit of non-horror stuff, or horror-adjacent stuff, as well. And we're just going to go back and forth about some stuff we've watched or read or consumed in some way. That sounds weird, doesn't it, sounding that way? But,
that's a lot of it is consuming now, honestly. People just...
Yes. Yeah, I dislike the term because it makes it sound like product rather than art. But, Yeah.
I feel the same way. It's weird the way the streaming services are going. At least here in America, things are, like advertising is kind of coming back now. The networks are back with their own streaming services.
Advertising penetrating streaming too. I was really annoyed when Amazon Prime started doing this freebie thing. I don't know if you're getting in here. Oh man, it's so annoying. No, I don't want ads. I'm paying for no ads. It's like,
that's the whole point of Prime, right?
Yeah.
But it's corporations.
They just snuck it in. Yeah, very annoying. So I barely use Prime, but I kind of use. I get Prime free because I'm really paying for the fast delivery of Amazon, really, and Prime gets thrown in with it, so it's okay. But there's some good stuff on Prime that isn't got ads, so I'm reasonably happy.
Oh yeah, same here.
Right, okay. I mean, I'll keep meaning to restart or get through Rings of Power, for example.
I'm the same. I watched the first 3, and then
I've watched the first episode 4 times now.
Oh wow, okay.
Because I keep thinking, oh, do you want to watch this with me? And someone says, yeah, and we watch the first one, and then we don't watch the next one, and I wait a bit, and then it's like, okay. But I'm gonna just watch it on my own now. I've decided.
Yeah, I need to get back to that one as well. It's I like it for what it is. But.
Oh, I thought it was pretty good. The first episode was pretty good. I didn't continue because I didn't dislike it. It's because I was watching it with people who I thought were going to continue watching it with me, and I didn't. So,
right. Yeah, I know how that goes too.
What are you going to do? Right, okay. I did post on our Facebook group about this, so that'll give a bit of an overview of what we're doing here, and we're also, I don't see any reason not to talk about what's been posted right at the top of the show. But we'll see how we go. Right, here we go. So what I posted was UNH errata. I don't know how to refer to the listeners as UNH, to be honest. UNHs? I don't know. So I came up with UN errata, but I was nearly going to go with UN affairii, but I don't know. UN, I don't know. Anyway, Jason and I so what I posted was Jason and I are sitting down to record later today. That's a lie now. Trying out a new format that was raised and named by Bruce Hannon. Hi, Bruce.
Thanks for the name, Bruce.
So sit in the electric chair. We'll be doing a show like this now and again is the plan.
Yes.
We're discussing several horror movies, TV shows, whatever we've watched recently, and one non-horror movie that we felt was worth a mention. Any horror movies, media, or indeed non-horror stuff you want to mention here, we'll raise it in the show. So here we go. Here's some of the feedback. These are long. Let's see how we go. Oh, I hope I got a tickle already. This is bad. This does not bode well. We'll see. Right, there we go. John Souder. Hi, John. I grew up watching whatever Tokusatsu shows made it to the States. Ultraman, Space Giant, Spectre-Man. I know Ultraman. I don't know the others. That doesn't ring a bell at all for me.
I really like
I don't think it got to the
Tokusatsu. Yeah, it's good stuff. You know, giant monsters and aliens usually.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid watching Japanese cartoons. One I remember particularly I really liked was one called Marine Boy. Does that ring a bell with you?
I haven't seen that one. I don't believe
it was cool. He had oxy gum, so he could swim under the water and do cool stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Anyway, back to John. Not so much Power Rangers for me because of my age. I've recently discovered the YouTube channel. I don't know how to pronounce this. Toei Online, spelled Toei, Toei Online. Yeah, that has episodes.
They're the Japanese. They're the Japanese company that produces a lot of Tokusatsu.
Oh, okay.
In fact, most of it, I think.
So, Toei Online now has episodes of many classic Japanese live-action superhero shows like Kamen Rider, Super Robot Mac Baron. Great, what a title! Which I'm watching.
Great stuff
for the first time. These are a lot of fun and easy to follow with or without subtitles. Just wondering if you all have any experience of these types of shows or if you have a love of kaiju films. Well, kaiju, yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah, kaiju as well. I like both.
Yeah, just so you know, on my podcast, Good, the Bad and the Odd, we had a series on kaiju, which is ongoing because there's always new kaiju films. And I think we've topped 50 episodes about kaiju films.
Oh, wow.
So we've done plenty of kaiju, pretty much everything classic. And
the good, the bad, and the odd.com.
Yeah. You know, and there's some real. I mean, my favourite is War of the Gargantuans.
Yeah, that's a classic.
I really like that one, and it's really hard to get. But it should be. Everyone should be able to see that one. That is such a great one. But you know, the Godzillas and the Gamera and all that.
Godzilla.
Yeah, and right up to, you know, the recent Godzilla-y stuff, both the American and the Japanese Godzilla-y stuff, and, you know, stuff like Pacific Rim, you know, which is kaiju adjacent. Well, it is kaiju.
Oh, it's definitely kaiju, yeah. I'd love to cover some of that on UNH sometime, too, because I do love all this stuff. You know, I grew up on Power Rangers.
Yeah. What's your favourite kaiju film? Would you say?
Oh my gosh! That's a loaded question, Mark. You know, I tend to like the older stuff, like when it's the guys in rubber suits. You know, like the CG looks good. Like I saw the latest Godzilla film from Japan, and I thought that was pretty cool. But man, you know, I like Mechagodzilla a lot. I think I might have to go with that one actually.
I've always been a King Kong versus Godzilla, old school. King Kong vs.
Oh yes,
I really love that film,
one.
even though it's got some dodgy stuff like, you know, blackface and
don't they have like a Nazi character in there too?
I can't remember now. I know there's South Sea Islanders with blackface, and there's also some dodgy stuff happening to an octopus. I remember that.
It's hentai before there was hentai anime.
Yes, but I have to say, War of the Gargantuans is really up there for me as well. That's
a good one.
Those for me. TV, not so much. I haven't really watched much TV. I mean, I like quite a lot of Japanese TV, but not particularly. Was it Tetsuka? That's a term I never even heard before today. So, well, I might have, but sorry, I said it wrong. That one. But you know, I used to watch, as I think I mentioned, I watched. I did mention. I used to watch Marine Boy when I was a boy. So we're talking early 70s Japanese animation. It's got the classic big eye, you know, the big eye, the anime tropes, the big eyes, slightly big heads, the European features. You know, it's got all of that. And do some screenshots of it. You'll see it's very nice artwork. It's very nice artwork.
Oh, yeah, I really like it.
And it's got a cool theme song too. So it's worth listening to that.
It's Marine Boy, brave and free, fighting evil with the sea. whooshing through the water on a friendly dolphin's back. Racing to the rescue of victims of attack. In a flash, he'll foil the foe with a quick boomerang throw. Loyal friend of the sea to the end is a Marine boy. Do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do,
He did say, have you got any experience of these types of shows? You obviously have, right?
The first one I saw was the English dubbed Ultraman, actually. This was in the 90s, so it was reruns,
Yeah.
Actually, it may have been the 80s. It probably was 80s. Wow. And I just thought those were really cool, really different. I think the new Ultraman show that's actually like CG on Netflix is pretty well done. I
didn't know
typically
that.
I don't really like when they go the kind of more CG route for anime. I'm kind of a traditionalist. I love the 2D stuff. But I think that for Ultraman, it really works. Also, I think the subject matter they get into in that show is really, really cool. Kind of, what would happen if these aliens came to Earth? And they do this in the old shows, too, as I'm sure you know.
Well,
Mark.
it's infused in Godzilla, too, isn't it? Aliens and,
Oh, yes.
and King Ghidorah and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking of Ultraman, though, I have to say one of my favourite kaiju monsters, as it were, is actually Jet Jaguar. Similar looking, similar-ish. I do like kaiju.
I do as well. I could go on about this stuff all day, but yeah, I've of course Power Rangers was probably the biggest influence for me. As for most kids in the 90s, my age group, we knew it was from Japan, but we didn't know a lot about the Japanese stuff, and I think I was already a little bit I was familiar with Japanese anime at that point, and so it was all just sort of a launching pad for me to sort of my love of Japan and pretty much all Japanese entertainment, I guess.
Yeah, I might be blaspheming here, but is Transformers Japanese, or am I dreaming? That's American.
Yeah, I believe it is Japanese.
Yeah, because I do remember Transformers 2 and, the rip-off GoBot. Was it GoBots? Things like that. But yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I grew up with Transformers in the 80s as well. I don't know. I guess you would consider Transformers more like sci-fi? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Okay, next one's from Bruce himself, the man who named this. Right? Bruce. And he says, I am famous! He says,
Indeed.
This will be great. As you know, Mark, I love the comfy chair episodes on your podcast. On my podcast, we call this the comfy chair.
And they're great. They're great.
Yeah. Sam and I just chat about what we've watched or read or played. We go into all sorts of things that aren't films. That's for sure. Board games, everything.
It's always entertaining, though.
Yeah.
You both are. You both have a good way with words, and of course, to us Americans, you're far more sophisticated sounding than we will ever be. So I just, again, everyone should listen to that show as well.
It was funny. I was playing a video game last week, and I got on with an American team. It was great. We were having a good time, but they were trying to do something, retrieve someone who I thought was too deep in the ocean, and if you dive down to get them, you die. So I was just warning them off, and I said a few times, take care. And the guy says, "You make it sound so cool." Yeah. Because what I was saying was this, and he did my accent back to me, so it was funny. And he said, "You can try, but you might die." which is what I kept saying. You see. But I didn't think about it. It's quite a funny phrase. You can try, but you might die. That's a T-shirt slogan. That is. You can try, but you might die.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, that was yeah. So yeah, we just chat about all sorts. Yeah. It's nice to know you're doing a non-horror movie too. Of course, your listeners come for the horror. However, it gives it a better insight on you and Jason hearing about other things that you're into. It reminds me of that time when you mentioned James Bond once in the group. I think it was maybe Live and Let Die for the voodoo elements, and some dude freaked out because it wasn't horror enough. At the time, I was thinking it's you, Jason, and Becky's group page and podcast, so you can speak about baking cupcakes if you want to. True. Actually, I've
always been pretty informal.
Yeah, I mean, I post songs and stupid stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's
oh yeah.
Actually, I have some pretty cool Halloween cupcakes recipes. If that could be horror.
Nice.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah. Perhaps not necessarily for your first electric chair episode, but a discussion or recommendation on newer TV shows would be nice. Now, I'm happy to talk about that while we're talking about new TV shows. If you guys are watching any of course, I don't really watch many TV series. Well, I do.
Indeed.
I loved The Last of Us, Stranger Things, Supernatural, American Horror Story, and Cobra Kai. However, I can't cope up with all the new shows, so don't know where to start. Yeah, all right, let's talk about TV shows for a bit. Yeah, I mean, Stranger Things is still up there for me, as is Cobra Kai, who Becky actually got me watching. Because I was thinking,
and me as well.
I don't know. I like the Karate Kid, and also Becky really told me onto how insane and good Karate Kid 3 is. It's just such a bonkers movie, and I love it. And it gets better with each watch as well. That's the thing; it gets better with each watch.
I agree. Totally agree.
In terms of TV shows, I've been doing a lot of Star Trek lately. In terms of trying to just keep up with Discovery, Picard, Strange New Worlds, things like that. And I've been really enjoying it, actually. I particularly enjoy Strange New Worlds. That's a great watch. Do you do much Star Trek, Jason?
I do. I'm not up to date on it. In fact, I need to finish Picard. But I have seen some of the Strange New Worlds episodes, and they are I like them a lot better than the I'm
Discovery?
blanking on the name, but the Discovery, yes, I like it a lot better because I tried to like Discovery so hard.
It just was pretending not to be Star Trek, wasn't it? That was its problem. It was. That's some likable, good characters and likable.
It did,
but it was just trying not to be Star Trek too hard. And I think it really failed in the first two seasons. And you know what? It's relaxed a bit now, so it's more Star Trek-y.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear
than
that.
it used to be. So it's improved. Picard, I have to say, I was okay with season 1 and 2. A lot of people hated season 2, but I was okay with it. But season 3, I really enjoyed. And I have to say, after I watched the penultimate episode of Picard, and I'm not doing any spoilers here, after I watched the penultimate episode of Picard, I can't remember being so juiced to watch the next episode of a show since maybe the end of season 2 of Twin Peaks, which is 30 odd years ago. I was so excited.
That's a high recommend right there.
So that was really good. But I'm quite invested in Next Generation stuff. So, and Picard being Picard, and stuff like that.
I mean, there's no better captain than Picard, in my opinion. Which I know a lot of people are Shatner.
Yeah, I still like the
Yeah, a lot of people like the Shat, and I don't dislike, Captain Kirk or anything, but I don't know. I guess I grew up with both, really.
Yeah, but really, what it is, Kirk's a lad and Picard's a man, right? A proper man.
That is so true. Yes.
Of all of his virtues are masculine virtues, aren't they? And whereas all of Kirk's vices are masculine vices. Let's put it that way.
So true. Both characters are very different, and I do think that. Well, you know what? In the movies, Kirk has a lot of growth too. But I like how the series, you really see Picard, like in the beginning, he's just so by the rules, and he doesn't really get close to any of the crew. And you see that progression. He becomes a bit of a softer person as the series goes on. And I remember there's one episode where they're playing poker, and he finally comes in the room, and he sits down and he says, "I should have done this a long time ago." And to me, that's like one of the greatest moments ever in television.
Yeah.
It's just, it'll give you the feels,
Yeah, I have to say, my favourite Star Trek is the original series, but there's some bad ones, but there's also some great moments in Next Gen.
Yeah.
And I have to say, as the series went on, and even in the most recent one, I really like Worf as well.
I have heard some things about Worf. I won't say anything. But I am excited to see that.
Yeah, one of my favourite moments in Star Trek is where Guinan gives Worf a drink and says, "Try this," and he drinks it, and he goes, "What is this?" And she says, "Prune juice," and he goes, "A warrior's drink."
It really is.
One time I actually made myself a prune smoothie. And when my daughter said to me, "What's that?" I said, "A warrior's smoothie," and she just looked at me like, "Well, you idiot." I don't care. Others, right, getting to horror, the big recommends at the minute for me are probably Ghosts, the BBC series, comedy series Ghosts. And What We Do in the Shadows, that just never isn't weak at all 4 seasons. And they do some really weird stuff in season 4, but it totally works. It could have failed, but it didn't. I also quite liked the Wednesday show,
Yes, that's on my list.
I think it's been cancelled, which is a shame. But season 1's fine. It's a standalone, so you can still watch it and enjoy it. But I really enjoyed that. There's probably others. I can't. You know what? I'm also still I'm still every week I watch one Doctor Who story from the classic series in chronological release order. Right?
Nice.
Been doing it for 3 years now, I think. And I'm on the 6th Doctor, which is getting the weaker end of everything. But I'm still doing it, so I'm still, getting through it.
That's awesome.
I think in about 6 months, I'll have also done the 7th Doctor and then the 8th film. And then I get into the non-classic series, the Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant stuff and so on.
Oh, yes.
But I've never watched them all, and I am slowly watching them, and I find that kind of interesting. They're not the greatest TV, but they're quite nice to have on in the background. And
I can definitely see that.
And sometimes you get a real gem as well, so that helps.
Yeah, we have streaming Doctor Who channels on the Pluto app now. I don't know if you guys have them there or not. They're really not. They're not in order, but I come across them frequently, and I do find myself stopping to watch them. So there's something about Doctor Who, even the older ones, I think, because I've watched some of the black and white.
It's such a great premise, just dropping in anywhere in time and space and helping people.
Right.
And sort of so, and they can, 1 week it could be Shakespearean, another week it could be just daft, silly. People talk about some of the later episodes being quite out there, but man, there's a few Patrick Troughton, who was the 2nd Doctor episodes, which are the weirdest stuff you've ever seen. Like proper, they must have been on drugs when they wrote this. It's really weird looking and stuff. So my favourite is really Tom Baker from that lot. In fact, Tom Baker's probably my favourite Doctor period. But I really like Patrick Troughton, who was the 2nd one. John Pertwee, who was the 3rd one. And John Pertwee was the first one I actually remember watching when it was on, in that. He was my first Doctor, in fact, John Pertwee. And then Tom Baker took over, and he was awesome.
He's really good. I like him a lot. It's hard to choose. I like David Tennant,
Yeah, I think out of the 2nd, I really like David Tennant, but I also very much like Max Smith as well. It's close for me, but I think David Tennant's better. The only thing that lets David Tennant down is they made some of the very last episodes he did quite sentimental, overly sentimental, which kind of okay. Come on, get on with the story. But most of his run is really awesome. Anyway, we've talked about TV quite a bit. I'll carry on. Sorry, no, let's give you a chance. What, any other TV that you?
Not really that current of stuff. I've kind of been catching up on a lot of anime series that I have kind of missed over the past, 4 years. I mean, I've always liked this stuff. But I'm very selective about the anime that I watch. So, I've got a big list. The main thing I want to check out is Chainsaw Man, which I've heard very good things about. I've had several people recommend that one to me.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, so, I mean, it's weird. I'm still not used to, seasonal anime, because you can watch it as it airs in Japan now, which is weird to an old otaku like me. I came up in the 80s and the 90s. Where it was hard to find VHS tapes to buy or rent, and now I feel like it's an oversaturation.
Oh, definitely. We've never been so lucky with what we have available. But the problem is time, right? Time.
That's it. Yes.
And you kind
especially
of have to be selective about how you spend your time, rather than Oh, I've finally got this VHS. I'm going to watch it several times now.
Exactly, and now I have all this free time, which is great in some ways, and in other ways not so great. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But so I do have to really think about, okay, what am I going to invest my time in? Because I love horror movies, I love anime, I love video games. So. And we're about to get a huge drop of video games like Starfield and all this other great stuff. So,
indeed, I've been involved.
Spider-Man game.
I've actually been involved in a few alpha testings of some new stuff coming, and it's really kind of there's some cool stuff coming. There is definitely some cool stuff coming. Let's see, where were we? So we're talking about, I don't know. One thing I do want to mention is I have also been watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Which I know Marvel's kind of dropping in everyone's opinion lately. But Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. finished around the time the pandemic started. And I've been listening to a podcast called The Rewatch Project, where a married couple talk about an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. per episode, right? And they've just finished the last one of season 7, the very last show. And so have I just finished the very last show. It's a great podcast, The Rewatch Project, but it's also a great show. For me, the highlight was season 4 because Ghost Rider's in it. And they did him really well. It was really good.
That's awesome.
And it was funny because, Coulson had seen, aliens and metahumans and all this, that, and the other. And he said, "So what's your deal? What are you?" Because he couldn't figure it out. He says, "Oh, I made a deal with the devil." And Coulson's like, "Okay." Because he's seen everything, right? So he's like, "Okay."
Yeah. This is just normal stuff now,
Yeah. But yeah, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D's a big recommend. And the podcast, The Rewatch Project, is a big recommend too. Okay, I'll carry on. So Bruce was saying, I literally just went onto Amazon and there's a 2023 show called Dead Ringers based on David Cronenberg movie. Yeah, with Rachel Weisz, right? As twins, if I remember rightly. And on really? Disney Plus is one called Blood Curse that looks interesting and is currently rating 7.7 on IMDb. Then there's more established shows like Chucky and Ash vs Evil Dead that I've heard good things about. Never mind. Yeah, Ash vs Evil Dead is totally in our warehouse, and we would strong recommend.
Probably my favorite TV show. I mean, it's hard to pick, but man, it's just done so well.
Yeah, it's it's quite strong stuff. There's because it's Ash versus Evil Dead, but it's comedy. It isn't like Evil Dead Rise, say, and they're both good, but in different ways. Ash versus Evil Dead is a different beast entirely, but yeah. Definitely recommend Ash vs Evil Dead. In fact, at some point, I'm going to rewatch it soon, I think. Our last post, our last post comes from Kevin Matthews. Hi, Kevin. Who says, I just watched Bull on Netflix UK and loved it. It may seem a fairly standard British crime thriller with uncomfortable moments of sudden violence puncturing in the proceedings, but it does skirt the edge of the horror genre in a divisive way that I loved. Bull, I've never heard of this, Kevin, but I'll make a note of that and I'll watch out for it and I might cram it at some point. So thanks for that. Right, now we're that's the feedback section and now we're going to actually get onto our little chat. Wow.
You to everybody.
Thanks, guys.
We really appreciate it. You guys are all awesome, and please keep it up. You know, we love hearing from everybody, and I'm gonna make a point to get back on Facebook a couple of times a week because I've been pretty neglectful of the poor Facebook the past really couple of months. Like I try to get on there, but then I just kind of forget about it. You know. I don't know why.
I mean, I don't. I go in it a few times a week, so I'm always kind of around, and I sort of interact with people. I don't post as much as I did, but yeah, it is what it is, and you know, such is life. That's more.
I enjoy it when I get on there, you know, and I love interacting with everybody.
Yeah.
So I really want to make a point to do that, and but I know, you know, we really do have some terrific listeners, and thanks to all of you guys who contribute in feedback and like John, shout out to you. Thank you for contributing with your awesome artwork. We really have a special group of people, I feel like.
For sure.
So thanks to everybody.
One other thing I'll just mention briefly while we're talking TV. For my own podcast, I do a sub-podcast called Anthology where I cover anthology TV. Now, I'm starting to think of myself as a curator and historian of anthology TV now. I have seen so many and have so many still to watch, but I've seen an awful lot of stuff that most people have never heard of. So I'm always happy to talk about that if anyone wants to sort of post about that. And I might even mention one of them in future electric chair shows. But I'm not going to today. But I'll give it some thought, and I might, because I feel like anthology TV is always worth talking about, right?
I do too. It's some of the best, you know. I mean, I just think of Twilight Zone, and that's one of the best shows ever made.
Yeah, I was always, I have to say, I was always more of a fan of The Outer Limits. But the more I watch, the more I'm swinging towards Twilight Zone. They are way better than I remember them. I remember them as being a bit sentimental and stuff.
Yeah, some of them can be.
Well, there's elements of that. It's not overly done, and there's some great stories and sort of interesting stuff going on. So, yeah, Twilight Zone's very solid. I think it's probably the best anthology show.
I like both a lot.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating hearing about all these other anthology shows that you have found. You really are a curator for them now.
There's lots of kids ones and things like that, which is kind of amazing. And I'm quite happy that the British do more than their fair share of anthology shows. There's loads of British anthology shows which I wasn't aware of, you know, or I was only partially aware of. But you know, there's the famous ones like Tales of the Unexpected. And things like that, but there's all sorts of other weird and wonderful ones, which is kind of cool.
I feel like all that stuff is worth watching. Honestly,
it's worth trying once. I'm looking forward at some point when I actually finally finish, say, The Outer Limits or Night Gallery. I might bring something like Tales from the Crypt or Tales from the Dark Side on. I like both of those.
Oh yeah.
So you know, but there's all sorts of other ones. And, you know, I found a show recently where the second series of an anthology show is presented by David Bowie, right?
Oh, really?
What the hell, right? Things like that. I find things like that. That's nuts, right? That's nuts.
That's great.
It's The Hunger, if anyone's interested. Anyway, let's actually start the actual chit-chat about what we've been watching. Do you mind if I start, Jason?
By all means.
Right, watched for the first time very recently. I was actually catching up on some Joe Bob Briggs Last Drive-In. But I feel it's okay to talk about these films in that context because Joe Bob Briggs does not talk over the films, right? He will interrupt them, i.e. the stuff will stop and he'll do a little talk about some section of it, usually quite interesting, about some aspect of the film or put some person on the film, and then get back to it. So I feel okay with that. But in terms of Last Drive-In, I'm working through it chronologically, and it's kind of hard to track down in the UK. It's weird. Not all of it, or most of it isn't on Shudder in the UK, which is weird, right? Only the
Well, that's
seasons.
happened with a lot of titles here too. I guess I don't know how the licensing works.
Yeah,
and also you're licensing stuff in different regions, so I'm sure that has an effect as well.
Indeed.
So yeah, I've also had that same experience, Mark.
But I watched Castle Freak for the first time, which kind of surprised me how little I knew about it, because I'm a big fan of From Beyond and Reanimator.
Oh yes, me too.
So I like Stuart Gordon, and I like, I've forgotten his Barbara Crampton, right?
Oh yes,
and Jeffrey Combs. I like all these people. So it was weird that it wasn't on my radar. And apparently it got a remake in 2020, which I did not. I only just found that out looking up some stuff on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I had heard about the remake. I have not. I don't know if it's good or not, or bad.
And what's
I wouldn't mind watching it.
Another thing that surprised me about reading about this on Wiki is this was a direct-to-video film. Now, it doesn't look like a direct-to-video. It feels like a full-blown film. It looks like it was made on film to me. It isn't. It is filmed. It isn't a video. It's filmed, and they've transferred it to video. But it looks like a full-on production that should have been in the cinemas to me.
Yeah, me too.
Now, I kind of like this. This is one of, I complain often about 90s horror being the worst decade, and I stand by that. I think it isn't a great decade for horror. But this one, slam in the middle, 1995. It's not jokey. It's not Scream self-referential or meta. It's a straight-up nasty horror film.
It is. I love it.
And it really works well. And apparently it was shot in a castle owned by Charles Band, the producer Charles Band, who also used it for the previous Pet and the Pendulum, which I also haven't seen and is a Stuart Gordon film. So I'm kind of thinking I've missed out some, right?
I haven't seen that one either. I need to check that one out. Yeah.
But this is a nuts film. It starts with this old lady whipping this thing. Person we don't really see. She dies, and then this American family inherit it, which is possibly, I don't know, is this a primordial American fantasy stroke nightmare about inheriting something from your European ancestry that's amazing?
It seems to happen a lot in shows and film. I guess it is a common theme, like even I'm trying to think, like I know there's like a whole Monsters
Go Home. It's the same premise.
Yes, right? Monsters Go Home. Yep, that's the one.
Yeah. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. It was gross and nasty, and
it is that.
There's people doing things to themselves that's like, whoa. And also a very angry marriage in the middle of all of this, where the guy's trying to make something up, but his wife is just not having it. And it doesn't sort of draw back at the end. There's no happy ending as such,
No.
So I feel like it reminded me most of a British film called Deathline, about a man thing that lives in the British underground and sort of cannibalizes people. It was something about that
sounds cool.
in this. Oh yeah, it's a great film.
I don't think I've seen that. It sounds familiar, but I'm
also
pretty
called
sure I have not.
Raw Meat, I think.
Oh yeah, okay, I have seen it.
Yeah, but yeah, I really, really like Castle Freak. Yeah, I think it's a solid proper horror film, decent entry into 90s horror that I was not known to me. So I'm kind of pleased that I got to see it, and I thought it was worth it.
Yeah, I like that one as well, Mark. That is one I have seen. And it was, I'm just reading over the Wikipedia here. It was made for quite cheap, which I didn't realize. about 500,000, which
Well, probably
we're
because
talking about
they had a
90s.
castle at their disposal. That means you save a
Yeah,
lot of money,
yeah.
I would imagine.
Absolutely. And this is Full Moon Entertainment, which I tend to really like, Full Moon Productions. I don't even know if they're around anymore as far as making films.
Yeah.
But it's some fun stuff,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, anyway, that's my first one. What's yours?
Very cool. Well, my first one is I'm going to go ahead and tackle it right here. Going to talk about The Voyage of the Demeter, which I did get to see in theaters. I wanted to cover this a little bit earlier, but unfortunately, again, health issues. But of course, it's based on Stoker's Dracula novel. Just one section where they're talking about Dracula's voyage to England. I like this film. I really did. I think I posted about it on the group actually, and said, yeah, it was cool. And this is probably the first film I had kind of just gone to see like on my own, in a long time. But I thought it was a very enjoyable viewing experience. So our main character is named Clemens, and I'm not going to get into spoilers here, but he is he's the doctor. Basically, takes on duties as the doctor of the ship, and he is a black man, which in the time obviously very difficult. And so he's had trouble getting work, even though he has his degree and everything. It's just the time. So he ends up on the Demeter of all places, unfortunately for him. So the atmosphere is properly creepy, which I really like. I think the visual effects are pretty good, and I like this because you've got the vampire. You have Dracula as a proper monster instead of like a sparkly kind of fairy vampire that is popular doing in a lot of films these days.
Yeah, you got a proper old school. I mean, I don't want you to spoil it, and I don't know, but I assume it's kind of much more Nosferatu than
Yes.
Lugosi.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. And I don't want to spoil anything either, so that's why I'm being very vague here. But I will say, as far as criticism-wise, it should have been 90 minutes, not 119. It really needed to be trimmed. There's a lot of walking around the ship, which is fine, and it builds some good tension and some good atmosphere. But there's something to be said for, making sure film. I don't want to say it's paced badly, but it's
you're not punchy, right? You like
punches. It's not punchy. Exactly.
Yeah. I see.
Unfortunately, it hasn't done too well at the box office, Mark. I don't expect. I mean, I guess it's not likely we'd see a sequel anyway. Yeah. But it was made for $45 million, and it has only made $11.8 million.
That's a shame. I do want to see it too, and I will get around to it soon.
But so I do recommend it, but it's go in with tempered expectations.
yes, I kind of get it, but we're kind of lucky we're getting some Dracula. I mean, we've had Renfield recently. Yes. We've had that underground Dracula film I mentioned, which was okay. I
do want to see that.
Yeah, I can't remember what's called, like The Invitation or something. And of course, we got a new version of Nosferatu coming out soon, haven't we?
I'm looking forward to that one. That's from the director of The Witch, isn't it?
I believe so, and it's Bill Skarsgård, Pennywise.
Yes, indeed.
And it's
Pennywise.
got some interesting people in the cast. Nicholas Holt's in the cast. Nice. Nicholas Hoult again, but not Renfield. But I believe it's character. No, but the thing is, it's Nosferatu. It's different characters, isn't it? Based on
it is.
He's playing Hutter. Now, if I remember rightly, Hutter is like the
is he like Harker?
Harker, yes, Harker.
I think like Harker, if memory serves. Yeah, I've seen Nosferatu. Gosh, I want to say 5 times now, which is not a ton in the grand scheme of things. But man, the original and the remake from the 70s, Both films are so good.
Yeah, really good. Interestingly, Willem Dafoe's in it as basically the Van Helsing character, which is interesting because he played Nosferatu in Shadow of the Vampire.
I like that film a lot, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that he's done both sides.
Yeah,
right?
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's by Robert Eggers, directed by Robert Eggers. So we got that coming soon,
man.
and I'm looking forward to that. I do like Nosferatu. I think it's the best silent film.
I think so, too.
Personally. Yeah. It's still creepy and stuff, But I'm looking forward to seeing The Voyages of Demeter. And I think that section of the book is really good too. It's really brief. It's only 10, 15 pages. But you kind of get a sense of dread of the sailors, as each one disappears.
Oh, yeah.
And the first few are like, oh, did he fall overboard? Or did he, what's... And then they start feeling, no, there's something going on.
They do.
And things like that.
They try to stay pretty accurate in some respects to the novel. It does diverge at some points, but I don't feel like it's not bad. Like I wasn't, I'm a pretty big Dracula fan, and I was not in any way offended or anything. So,
okay.
But enough about that one. Mark, over to you. What's your number 2?
Yeah. Well, I've been watching I've recently rewatched all of the Amicus Portmanteau horror films. I think there's 7.
Oh, nice.
And I really enjoyed that, but I just wanted to spend my favourite and just briefly mention my favourite of that, which is Tales from the Crypt, which interestingly borrows from Tales from the Crypt, the comic, and a few other EC titles. But this is a really fun one. One of the reasons I particularly recommend it is I feel like all 5 segments are strong. All 5 stories are strong words, and a lot of portmanteaus. One's a comedy, and one's you know what I mean? It kind of varies. But no, this one. But I'll tell you, there's 2 stories that make this particularly memorable. This is, if you think of a portmanteau horror film, the one where this happens or the one where that. This one has the story where Joan Collins kills her husband, but a homicidal Santa gets involved. So if anyone remembers that, it actually functions as a Christmas movie, this one, and it's Tales from the Crypt. But the other one involves a man taking over management of a house for the blind.
Oh, interesting.
But he's he's a military man and wants it all like military run, but starts cutting back on their supplies.
Oh, no. Oh, man.
And their meals, and they start dying off of hypothermia and stuff because he's turned the heating down. Meanwhile, he's having these big feasty meals. But one particular resident keeps complaining to him. But in the end, they get their revenge in a suitable way. I think it's okay to spoil this. They essentially... He's got a dog. He's also got a dog that's quite fierce. So whenever they complain, the dog starts barking at them, and he doesn't control it that well. And of course, they're blind, so they don't know how close the dog is or anything. But what they do is they steal the dog, and then they kind of build this weird rat run where this guy is trapped, and he's only got one way out. Near the end, is one point he has to go through this corridor, and there's razor blades on both walls, and it's very narrow. The gap is very narrow, so he has to carefully edge through these razor blades sideways. And when he gets to the other end, there's suddenly you hear this growling, and his dog is behind the door, and they open it. So the ravenous dog is released towards him. And as he turns to run back down the corridor of razor blades, they turn all the lights out.
Oh, nice. That's great.
Yes.
I got to see this.
And as it goes, as with all these things, there's a wraparound story, and it's like it could be someone... They're all dead, and they're in a place. There's all sorts of variants on that, and it's one of those. So, yes. Really, Tales from the Crypt is a really particularly good one, I thought. So, and it harks back to EC Comics, so it's got that pedigree.
Oh, that's awesome.
I really like these movies. They're not my favourite horror portmanteau. My favourite horror portmanteau is Creepshow. I really like that film. I think that's a solid film too. But I do like these ones are kind of the originator of Creepshow in many ways.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I mean, the whole horror portmanteau goes back to a British film from 1945 called Dead of Night.
I have actually seen that one.
Where, where it's got famously, there's a segment where a guy is kind of got a ventriloquist doll that's kind of his alter ego.
Yeah.
And it's quite scary and weird.
It's creepy.
Anyway,
very creepy.
so that's Tales from the Crypt. Strong recommend.
Nice. For my number 2, I'm going to go, I'm going to go with Martin, but specifically I wanted to talk about, I believe it's called Second Sight release. I didn't even know that there was an edition that came out in the UK. You guys have a remastered edition of Martin before we do, Mark.
Oh, I didn't know that. I really like Martin. I saw it many years ago. I've seen it a few times. Really solid film.
Yeah, George Romero, 1977. This is my favorite George Romero film, and Romero himself said it's actually his favorite film.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? And that's high praise, because Romero, I mean, I like pretty much everything Romero did, honestly. But man, this remaster, it is well done by Second Sight. I actually was able to get the collector's edition of this. So a really amazing remaster job. Now, I should note that this is the original theatrical release. You know, there's I believe it's like a 4-hour original cut of Martin that has been found.
Oh, blimey, I didn't know that. Right, okay.
Yeah, but it's in a private collector's hands. So,
oh my God.
Second Sight, they tried to get it. I guess they just weren't able to reach a negotiation. But nonetheless, this print is really nice. And this is the color version. The 4-hour print that is out there is apparently black and white. But there's a great documentary that goes with this. The box set itself actually comes with these really nice little title card extras. There's a little book that kind of talks about the history of the film. There's artwork and a ton of other goodies in there as well. So, I mean, if you like Martin, and I'll just briefly say, Martin is the story of a guy who very much believes that he is a vampire, and his family also has pretty much brought him up to believe that he is a vampire. And as you can imagine, this creates a lot of problems. This film is really dark. It's a really brutal film in a lot of ways. Mark.
Yeah, it's a great film. John Amplas, the lead, is terrific. He really carries the film. He makes it really strong. And it's the whole aspect of, you know, if someone thinks they're a vampire, they're not a vampire, but they kind of trying to do vampire things, but they're klutzy and stuff, you know? And it's not really working out in a lot of ways. Or it's messy rather than elegant, you know, things like that.
And his cousin is pretty much Von Helsing in many respects. Yeah. And he's just this crazy old man who is, you know, he's all about the old Catholic ways. And it's funny, you know, there's one scene where George Romero actually plays the priest in the film. Yeah. And, you know, he says something like, "Do you believe in demon possession, Father?" And I can't remember the exact line, but he basically says, "Well, you know, there are a lot of psychological factors," or something like that. Yeah. And it's a very interesting film. You know, I was big into the kind of vampire subculture of the 90s. I think my parents worried a little bit at the time. I never got into anything too crazy or anything like that. But it was always fascinating to me. And this film being from the 70s was just such fascinating material to me because, you know, it's been around that long. So, and I always thought the 90s subculture was sort of this, you know, this revolutionary movement or something. But no, it's gone back a long time, it looks like. Now, Martin is the most, I guess, disturbing case of it, but there is actually a real case of a guy who sort of had a vampire cult with his girlfriend or whatever. I don't know if he was ever aware of Martin or anything like that, but this film is really cool. Really, like, it feels like
it's interesting. It's a really you could talk about it for hours. It's one of those kind of films. And the way it's done, and also the whole interaction with the DJ where he's phoning in about being a vampire, and they call him the Count and things like that. And so there's all that area of exploration too. And the fact is, what I don't want to spoil it in too much, but it's what happens to him isn't because he did something, but he has done bad things, but it's actually a mistake, right?
It's ironic.
It's
isn't it?
ironic, yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's this really kind of tragic, ironic turn. We really need to cover this at some point. There are like 3 or 4 directors' commentaries on this too. I guess from over the years, because there's one with like George Romero and the cast and the crew, and so it's a loaded set, and this is actually the first 4K Blu-ray I bought, Mark.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it does not disappoint. No,
4K is really nice when they do a proper transfer.
Yeah. I feel like they did a great job because they had the original. I believe he's the cinematographer, so he's like it still has that great feel of the 70s without being. Sometimes they overdo the remastering, like with Batman '89 is a prime example, where it just looks almost too clean. And this gets it just right. It hits that sweet spot. So.
Yeah. It's a great film. The whole, when he thinks back on what he may have been, and it's in black and white, so it's like an old film, like an old vampire film. So you don't know if it's his imagination or what. Well, we all kind of know he's not really a vampire, so it must be, because his family have treated him like that. He's got all these problems, right?
He's definitely got that psychological factor going on. Like, I can't imagine, but I guess if you're raised in a family telling you, like, hey, you are like an evil vampire, Nosferatu or whatever, you're going to believe it,
Yeah. Good choice. Excellent choice, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one I'd love for us to cover sometime too, because it is such a. There's there as you said, Mark, hours of discussion on this one.
Yeah,
it's a class.
Okay, my next one is actually I want to kind of pimp on the box set of folk horror that's called All the Haunts Be Ours. It's one of the films in that box set. And I have to say, I'm working through that box set, and up until the last few, which weren't that great, I was thinking whoever created this is a genius, because everything in this whole set is absolutely great. Because they've got for example, they've got old episodes of, a 1 hour Czechoslovakian drama, say, or things like that. But they're all really good. They're all really good. But I'm into the Australian section, which I think is a little weaker. But there's like British TV ones. It's not the usual big 3. It's not your Witchfinder General. I've blanked. Blood on Satan's Claw and The Wicker Man. It's the other folk horror from around the world. Anyway, Witch Hammer is the one I want to talk about. Now, this is a Czechoslovakian film made in 1970. It's very, very reminiscent in terms of story, not in terms of look and feel, but in terms of story of, say, The Devils, Ken Russell's The Devils, about the possessed nuns in Loudon.
Oh, yeah.
It's very much that, and it's also very much in the vein of Witchfinder General, but it was made before Witchfinder General, right?
Oh, man. And I love Witchfinder General.
Yeah. Witch Hammer is what it's called. And
it's
black and white. It's one word, Witch Hammer.
Okay.
One word, based on a novel, which I'm not going to even try and pronounce because there is intonations over the letters. I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced, but it is based on a Czechoslovakian, I presume, novel. And it's based on the Northern Moravia witch trials of 1670s, right? So the same kind of era as Salem and Matthew Hopkins. Matthew Hopkins was maybe a century before, but that kind of era, right?
Oh yeah, I love
and
it.
Here we basically have a professional witch finder who gets paid for his results. Therefore, he's going to find witches, isn't he? If he gets paid for it.
Absolutely.
And he's just comes to this town and basically people start turning on each other and turning each other in.
That's how it usually goes.
And they're horrible. And similar, the Witchfinder's got a horrible sidekick, a sort of lecherous sidekick. And again, very much like Matthew Hopkins and John Stern, that kind of relationship that was in Witchfinder General. And meanwhile, they're getting well paid and feasting while people are kind of going short, and all these women are getting burnt alive. Old ladies. There's one point where an old lady is at mass, and this is how it all starts. An old lady's at mass, but she pockets the wafer, the holy wafer, instead of taking it. It gets noticed. A priest sort of pulls her to one side and said, "Why did you do this?" And she says, "Oh, this old lady who's like the health giver in this community, the doctor, as it were, sort of said, well, your cow's not giving milk. If you give her some of the Holy Communion wafer, the cow will start giving milk. That's why she stole it, right?" And then this escalates into an inquisitor being called in, and then the whole town gets involved, and he keeps going on about how important the Malleus, the book of getting the witches, which is called Hammer of the Witches in English, but it's Malleus Maleficarum. But there's also a priest who's way more rational, saying, well, this is an ignorant woman who's been told this thing. We can't blame her for all the, Essentially, he becomes the antagonist to this Witchfinder, who then uses his power to draw that man into and be found guilty of witchcraft, and things like that. And the priest isn't perfect. He has a young housekeeper who's quite pretty, and doesn't go unnoticed. And at one point, they asked him directly, "Have you slept with you?" And he says, "Yeah, once." Which condemns him really, but he will not tell a lie. Yeah. But then we see his friends who get involved with the Witchfinder, who is first kind of enjoy it and feel important by it and feel like they're doing good work, but the more it goes on, the more sickened they feel by what's going on, and they start dropping out. Things like that. It's a really interesting drama, and it's kind of, imagine, if you haven't seen The Devils, this won't mean much, but imagine if The Devils were made by Ingmar Bergman. It's how this feels, rather than Ken Russell. It's a great film. It's a really good film.
I got to track this
interesting,
one down, Mark.
Given how early it comes in the whole folk horror sort of, many have compared it to The Crucible, and it is kind of similar to The Crucible. It's got the same beats and stuff like that. But Witchhammer is really solid. It's really solid, this film. Anyway,
nice.
Yeah.
I made a note already because I definitely want to catch this.
Yeah, it's a great box set, but it's an expensive box set. It really is quite a lot of money for what you're getting. But you know what? Yeah. I think I had a tax rebate, and I thought, go on. And I haven't regretted it at all. I'm really happy with some of the content, and some of the extra content is quite amazing as well. But I've seen some American folk horror, some British TV folk horror. There's all sorts of interesting stuff going on, worth seeing. But yes, I'm still working through it. I watch one a week, so I'm still working through it. So I'll probably talk about another one next time we record this, maybe, but we'll see. So yeah, that's me. Back to you.
Very cool. My number 3, I saw Batman The Doom That Came to Gotham, which is inspired by the 3-issue comic book miniseries of the same name. Now, I had never read the comic book, but I knew going in that it had sort of a Lovecraftian sort of theme, definitely. And you certainly feel that. It's like Batman in the 1920s. It's pretty awesome. I like the artwork a lot. I don't know. It's weird. Like I kind of, it's funny. Like I said of the Demeter, like, man, they should have like cut this. But I feel like this film, if you will, or direct to video, I guess. It should have actually gone on a bit longer. There was a lot.
It was right. Well, the comics, I actually read the comic some time ago, and I have watched.
Oh, this. Cool.
I feel like I didn't understand what was going on for a lot of it. but I just like watching it.
I would agree with that. Yeah, because I mean, I know some about Lovecraft stuff, but I'm not like, I'm not a Lovecraft historian or anything. I think, like tentacles and and there's some crazy looking monsters in this, right?
Yes.
I feel like the animation really well done. It's I don't. The only thing I will say negatively against it, and like the voice actor who plays Batman now, he's just not Kevin Conroy.
Yeah.
I feel like he tries hard, but it's just, man, and it just kind of sucks to know that, like, hey, we're never going to get another Batman with Kevin Conroy, and this just happens to be the first kind of animated film after the passing of Kevin Conroy. So I think that kind of hit hard for me as I was watching it,
Yeah.
But a really good film, I thought, Mark. And would you say it's up to the standard of the comic book?
Yeah. I have the same problem with the comic book. I know I find the story quite incoherent, but I really like it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure it needs to be Batman, to be honest.
Yeah. I would agree.
But I really I liked it, but I didn't understand what was going on. Really,
a lot of it's kind of like a fever dream.
Yeah, it is. It's nightmare film. Now, I have read a lot of Lovecraft, and the infusion of Lovecraft's really good in all sorts of aspects, not just the tentacly stuff. It's the whole horror of what you might be, horror of what the beings around you might be. And all this kind of stuff, and that kind of works. I did like how this looked quite a lot.
The art's gorgeous.
But as I say, I couldn't make head nor tail of the story. Once it got about 25 minutes in, I didn't understand what was going on, and I didn't really mind, so that was all right.
Yeah, I was the same. It's kind of like, well, I don't get it, but this is cool.
Yeah, so, it's kind of like that.
And I mean, it's that way with a lot of the older anime stuff I like too. This is kind of got that feel. Maybe not to the extreme of some of the '80s anime films,
Yeah.
But it definitely has a lot of horror elements going on here, which is really really neat in a Batman kind of film. They've done a few Batman horror crossovers before. There's like the Batman versus Dracula, which is actually good, believe it or not. And
I'll tell you my favourite. This is going to sound weird, but my favourite is of the crossovers that Batman's done. I mean, he'd done some with Judge Dredd, which were awesome, but he did one crossover I really particularly like, which was Batman versus Alien.
Oh, that's got to be fun.
Yeah, and at one point the alien actually is in a crocodile. So it's not it doesn't look like the alien we know. You know how the alien's different based on what I'm trying to think of the word, incubates in. So, for example, in Alien 3, it's a big dog, isn't it? So it's a different looking alien. But this is a massive crocodile. And so the alien looks appropriate, considering it's come kind of from a crocodile. So, yeah. I really like that one. But yeah, no, Batman, the dude that came to Gotham, couldn't make head nor tail of it. Quite liked it.
Yeah, likewise.
It was.
Well, over to you, Mark.
Right, my last horror, because I'm going to do a non-horror after this, is actually a show on the stage. It's in Britain, so it's a little insular, but never mind. But I have seen
it's a bonus, right?
Yeah, I have seen this show 3 times, so this is the 3rd time I've seen this. Always a different cast, but it's the Rocky Horror Show, which we all know, right?
We covered this pretty recently.
Yeah, the Rocky Horror Show is really
film.
The film. But on stage it's really special because there's not another show quite like it. The nearest I can come to in Britain of anything like it is a pantomime, where on Christmas we all go to the pantomime and we get comedians and singers making quite topical jokes, a bit risque, but you're encouraged to join in. You're encouraged to shout, "Oh, he's behind you," and "Oh, no, he isn't," all that kind of stuff. But Rocky Horror is strictly for adults. So the actual language is way stronger than that. But the whole audience participates in the show and they dress up. There's lots of people looking like Frankenfurter and Rocky and Magenta and Columbia and Riff Raff and Dr. Scott, all of the characters in the show, and the songs are terrific. You know, we all know the Time Warp, but which is a real showstopper, which is interesting because it's a showstopper that happens about 3 songs in. It's quite close to the beginning of the Time Warp. But, you know, there's double science fiction double feature, The Sword of Damocles, there's a light at the old Frankenstein house, all of those, and it's just a spectacular show, and it's always enjoyable. You have a really good time because everyone's really happy to be there and enthused, and it's infectious, right?
I have always heard nothing but positive things.
Yeah, but some of the shout-outs are super rude, but the old narrator kind of gives as good as he gets. It's kind of funny. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I saw it in Nottingham, in the concert hall at Nottingham. Really enjoyed it. But it's a touring production. It's still touring the UK, so you can catch it. Depending when you listen to this. If you listen to it in about a year's time from when we put it out, it's no longer touring. But, you know, it is at the moment.
Right.
Yeah,
that might make a difference.
Big recommend. Really enjoyed it. And I'd go see it. Any production of it, it's worth it. Right?
Yeah, I'd love to see a live production at some time.
It's extremely.
The movie was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think my 2 favourite horror stage shows are probably Rocky Horror Show and Little Shop of Horrors, actually.
Nice.
So The Woman in Black is really something as well.
Oh, I bet.
On stage.
Yeah, love that film too.
Yeah. Anyway, that's me. Over to you.
All right. Well, my last one, which is non-horror, is I got to discuss it. It's The Flash.
Okay, I've seen this. Yes.
Hey. Okay. Cool. So I mean, I knew going in this was going to be interesting because the film had massive delays and, of course, major controversy because of the main actor. You know, I won't get into all that, but I mainly wanted to see it because it's got the return of Michael Keaton as Batman. Unfortunately, I will say at the beginning, I didn't think Michael Keaton could save the film. Well, what did you think about that, Mark?
Yeah, no, I like the film. I definitely felt the second half was way stronger than the first half.
Absolutely.
It's not deliberately, but I don't really know what the actor's supposed to have done. I don't know any of that stuff. I will say that I really like the TV Flash, and when this guy was cast, I thought, why didn't they do the TV one? He's so good.
I wondered the same thing. Yeah, and they probably wonder it too now.
Yeah, and I think there are better actors that could have done this, but it was fine, and I didn't mind it. And I felt some of the shtick where he was, I don't want to spoil it too much, but his interactions with an earlier iteration of the Flash, just put it that way, were kind of a lot of fun. But honestly, it really took off when Michael Keaton appeared for me.
Yes.
I mean, the CG was weirdly off.
Yes.
It was sometimes it was good, but most of the time it was just weird.
I have a
and
note
it was like,
here
didn't
about
they have enough money to do it properly? But having said that,
they had to.
About halfway through, I kind of got used to it. I just accepted it as a stylistic choice, like it was deliberately not realistic or something. That's all I could make of it, and I really enjoyed all the cameos. There was an amazing amount of cameos, both in the comic books and the TV and movie versions. I couldn't believe I was seeing. Wow, that is like a reference to Flash from so long ago. An alternate timeline flashes and stuff like that.
Yeah, some of the stuff they got in was really neat.
Yeah.
But man, there are certain things like that really bugged me. Like, you know, you get to see the Batmobile from 1989, but he never drives the thing.
Oh yeah, that is a cool car, but yeah, it's a shame. That is a shame. But I really Keaton totally knocks this out of the park.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah,
he is absolutely. He's still Batman.
Yeah.
You know, what is he, 70 years old? Probably older than that.
Yeah,
right?
and I have to say, Michael Keaton's casting as Batman is a lesson to us all not to assume that someone's going to be good because we don't think they're a good casting choice. You have to see it. We all thought Heath, look at Heath Ledger as the Joker. How amazing he was as the Joker, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You just don't know until you see it. And I remember the fuss when Michael Keaton was cast as the Batman. It's like, give it a chance. And he totally nailed it, right? He totally nailed it.
He did. I was a kid when that came out, so I was like, I think I was around seven years old. So I wasn't aware, I guess, of the fuss until researching it later on. But my father, I know he's mentioned that, like no one thought Keaton was going to be good, but now looking back, you never hear anything bad said about Keaton.
No, because
he did nail it.
He nailed it. No, Batman and Batman Returns are still fantastic films.
Absolutely.
A lot of that is down to Keaton.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Batman '89 is still probably my favorite Batman.
Yeah, I really like Batman Returns as well.
It's good
got
too.
So many interesting elements. So weirdly,
it's a horror film. Man.
So many characters thrown into the mix as well, but it is a horror. It's a Christmas horror film, in essence.
It is, yeah. Max Shrek,
Yeah, indeed. I quite like The Flash. I liked it more than disliked it. I'd sort of say it's a 6.5, 7. As long as you can live with the CGI, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate the film by any means, and it's worth it just to see Keaton one more time as Batman. Some of the choices they made, though, just really bizarre to me. Just left me kind of scratching my head.
Yeah, I like some of the cameos were nuts. The cameos
are cool.
Cameo central, this film. It really was. The different variants of Superman and there's all of this going on. And it does make me... It made me think back to... I used to listen to a podcast with Kevin Smith about Batman called Fat Man on Batman, right?
I love that podcast.
And he had,
from back in the day. Yeah.
Is it Scott? The writer for Batman. No, not Scott. I'm thinking of Scott Snyder. Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison on, and I remember Grant Morrison distinctly saying, he goes, "No, I see all variants of Batman as part of Batman." So, for example, he says, "I see the Adam West Batman as Batman was like still starting out. He'd had 5 years under his belt, but he was exposed to loads of drugs from the Joker and Scarecrow. So all of that is how he remembers that part of his life because of all the drugs he was subjected to."
Oh, there you go.
And kind of this film kind of felt like that to me.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Batman, just to mention, it's a shame, Arlene Sorkin, who is basically, I mean, she is the original Harley Quinn. We just lost her, and she unfortunately passed away at 67.
Yeah,
man, that hit hard.
That sucks. However, she has left a generation, many generations of children and teens to come, being able to see all that class. She is Harley Quinn, right? She is Harley
absolutely
Quinn. And
no one did it better.
Yeah. And there's been some great Harley Quinns, but we have that body of work now. It's a bit like when Pee Wee Herman passed. Paul Rubens passed, I should say.
Yeah,
we've always got Pee Wee's Big Adventure, man. That is never gonna not be watched,
exactly
right? So,
and it's a great film. Like, it's
making
still
a lot of
up.
people happy over and over again. That we should remember that when certain actors die.
Absolutely.
Look at all this great stuff like Death Behind that are going to make a lot of people happy for centuries to come. Right?
You're very right there, Mark. I like the way you think of it, man. It's the way to go, for sure.
Right, I'll do one more. I'm going to be brief on this. I just had to do this because it was mentioned in our feedback, right? Live and Let Die. Live and Let Die. Love this film. I love it way more than I really should. I recognise it has weaknesses, but it's such an exciting, fun film. And I think the fact I saw it when I was 8, when it first came out, and it absolutely blew my mind when I was 8. And not only that, my mother took me to the theatre, same cinema it premiered at, which is the Leicester Square Odeon, right?
Oh.
She took me 1 week after it premiered. So, and it hadn't come out in the local cinemas by then. So I got to see it a few weeks before anyone else I knew.
That's amazing.
And I absolutely loved it. There's just so many good things about it. The whole voodoo thing is super cool. And it has still the greatest boat chase in cinema history, in my opinion. It's just and I love the fact all the script said is, James Bond jumped over the alligators, and what follows is the greatest boat chase in cinema history. That's literally what they had in the script. I even like the J.W. Pepper stuff and all of that comedy stuff that went on to influence, in my opinion, things like the Dukes of Hazzard, along with, Burt Reynolds films like White Lightning, of course, which it was probably ripping off. I'm pretty sure Live and Let Die was ripping off blaxploitation. It was ripping off Burt Reynolds movies. I'm
okay with that, though.
And all that. In fact, James Bond kind of gets most interesting when it rips off other genres. Some of the best James Bond is ripped off. It ripped off kung fu in. Maybe this wasn't as a good example, but in it ripped off kung fu movies. In Live and Let Die, it ripped off blaxploitation. And one of my favourites is License to Kill, where James Bond goes pretty much Punisher. Goes rogue. Yeah. And I think Bond's most interesting when he goes genre rather than spy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I am of the same mindset.
And Live and Let Die, best theme song. Some of the great henchmen. I know we've got Odd Job and Jaws, but Tee-Hee and Baron Samedi are just amazing in this film. And there's just some really spectacular stuff going on. And I just like it. And I think Roger Moore was never better, actually, as James Bond, because he's still got some of that Connery roughness, toughness about him in this film. He kind of gets less tough. But I have to say, Roger Moore is fantastic at delivering the one-liners.
Now, is Roger Moore your James Bond?
No, it'd be Connery. It's Connery.
Yeah, for me too.
But I kind of like... I also really like Dalton and Brosnan. I'm not a big fan of Craig, but Skyfall's maybe my Live and Let Die's my favourite James Bond film, for a start. But Skyfall is probably my second favourite. I just think it works so well. And it's got so much class about it, and it's emotional and looks great, and like the villain's obviously the good guy in his own story, which is really nice to have that complexity on a villain. Javier Bardem was a great villain in that. But Live and Let Die, I just love Live and Let Die.
It's a classic, man.
Yeah, and it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I have a poster of it above my desk. I'm looking at it right now.
That's awesome.
And that's another thing not much mentioned. It's one of the great film posters of all time as well.
You know what? I would definitely agree.
Yeah.
I actually see the poster right here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's James Bond for sure.
Yeah, and I think Roger Moore, I mean, Spoil Love Me, you could argue objectively it's maybe a better film. But but for me, Live and Let Die is the number one of James Bond films. I just really like it.
It's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun, and there's some. I also like how respectful they are to, a black cast. There's no.
Yeah.
This is a villain equal to Bond. There's none of that. So I like that too. And honestly, let's face it, this is a blaxploitation film with a white hero. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And if you some people aren't happy with that, but I bet a lot of black people really like this film too. I better shut up because I really don't know. But I bet they have no problem with it because it's a fun, feisty film, right? This is one of the joys of blaxploitation. They're fun. They're really fun. And I think Live and Let Die's got a bit of that built into it, which is nice. Because James Bond could be sometimes a bit stuffy. Sometimes.
Yeah, a little bit. But it's still awesome,
And whenever James Bond comes back, if and when it comes back, I hope they don't forget the fun. Because they lost them.
Yeah.
They did lose a bit of that in the first few. Though, Casino Royale was awesome. There was a lack of fun because basically because Austin Powers had totally derailed that kind of side. They could not do anything with a better funding because it looked like Austin Powers, so they had to do something. But now they're kind of much more relaxed, and it's relaxing, so it's fine. Anyway, I've gone way too long about Live and Let Die.
The great thing about like Austin Powers too is, it's not just spoofing on James Bond. It's like the Avengers, and there were a ton of spy shows in that era. So
there was Matt Helm, Owlman Flint. I mean, in many respects, Austin Powers is more like Owlman Flint than James Bond.
It is, yeah. But I love the part with the shoe where he's like, "Who throws a shoe, man?" But anyway, that's...
there's too many... Yeah, we best not start quoting Austin Powers.
Yeah, probably shouldn't. Probably shouldn't. But...
Yeah. But I mean, I think when I respond to something, I'd say 30% of the time with a GIF. You use GIFs.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe 25% of the time it's an Austin Powers GIF.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
I've used that one. The one where he's stuck in the car going backwards and forwards many times whenever I had problems or wanted to sort of describe something that's insurmountable. That's the GIF I will use. Yeah. Anyway, I think we've kind of done our first electric chair. We have gone on a bit, but that's the point of this, right? That's the point of this, to be kind of a bit more freewheeling.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Well, Mark, thanks so much, man. This has been a blast as always. Anything else you want to add before we sign off here?
No, if you do like your horror TV, remember I've got Anthologic running. Just look up Good, the Bad and the Odd.com, and Anthologic is a sub podcast for that. It's got its own stream, so if you like your horror stuff, it's mostly horror.
Good stuff. I enjoy it. And I like how, you mentioned punchy earlier. Like, I feel like it's a very punchy podcast.
Yeah. I mean, each show's 10. Rarely do we get above 50. Do I get, because it's me talking solo mostly, not always, but mostly. It rarely gets above 15 minutes. So it's a taster. It's a taster podcast. That's what it's about.
Well, as always, guys, please check out our Facebook group, www.facebook.com/group/UNH. You can also find us on YouTube and pretty much everywhere you listen to your podcast, iTunes and Google Podcasts. There are a million different places now. But yeah, the YouTube, I continue to be just amazed by the numbers. I kind of wonder, Mark, like, our podcast service is going to continue? Like, I feel like there's still something to be said for audio-only podcasts,
Well, the fact you can have an auto-download of it and just listen to it rather than have to click on YouTube and...
Exactly.
It's delivered. As a podcast, it's delivered to people, whereas a YouTube, they need to seek it, don't they? So I'm a big fan of the podcast format.
I still like the podcast format, and our podcast does... the audio version goes up first, and then, a couple of days later, sometimes a week later, if I get busy, the YouTube version comes out. But also, just want to thank everyone for their feedback, and we'll see you next time. We don't know what we're doing next time, do we?
Well, we'll figure something out. We'll do something in a couple of weeks, though. That's fine.
Absolutely, we'll definitely be back. And so, bye from me.
And bye from me.
The United Nations of Horror is a podcast about all things horror. From thrillers of yesteryear to today's modern horror, we are here to present fun and intelligent conversation about the genre films we love. Join us and please help spread the word about the United Nations of Horror podcast and videocast to horror fans across the globe. Find the podcast on all fine podcasting services. Join us on Facebook by simply going to facebook.com and entering in United Nations of Horror. You can also find us on YouTube by going to youtube.com and searching for United Nations of Horror podcast.